Okay, so today we're going to discuss why study feminism, and this is part of our series. The answer that we're going to consider today is the personal is political. Why study feminism? Because the personal is political. And I've explained in another video what that means. The personal is political. It is a rallying cry for modern feminism, in particular in the United States. And today we're going to consider how the personal is political through the work of Bell Hooks' essay, Talking Back. Okay, so Bell Hooks is a pen name for a woman who was born Gloria Jean Watkins. She was a renowned author, feminist, and social activist, and known for her insightful writings on topics such as race, gender, and class. Throughout her life, she challenged systems of oppression and advocated for social justice. Bell Hooks' work continues to inspire and empower people around the world to strive for a more equitable and inclusive society. So in her essay, Talking Back, which was written in 1989, or at least published in 1989, Bell Hooks does a third wave, what we would call a third wave of feminism move, theoretical move, a perspective that she offers that shows us not just how the personal is political, but how, in fact, there are different feminist processes for different women. And in particular, we can look at different cultures and see how gender works to define women's experiences. Okay. So one of the first things that she does is to show us how, in fact, gender is a cultural construction. Okay. She says within feminist circles, silence is often seen as the sexist right speech of womanhood, the sign of women's submission to patriarchal authority, with an emphasis on women's silence may be an accurate remembering of what has taken place in the households of some women from WASP backgrounds in the United States. But in Black communities and diverse ethnic communities, women have not been silent. Their voices can be heard, certainly for Black women. Our struggle has not been to emerge from silence into speech, but to change the nature and direction of our speech, to make a speech that compels listeners, one that is heard. So the differentiation between women here as having different cultural experiences that therefore end up having women with different gendered experiences is how Bell Hooks should be understood here. She's doing a very famous demarcation that says there's a mainstream dominant feminism out there that has come from the experiences of WASP women, white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant women, that is unlike that of most Black women in the United States. I'm not sure that she expects to speak for all women or all Black women in the United States or all WASP women in the United States. But she says that in some communities, women are not gendered to be silent. They are gendered to speak, but their speech is not often taken seriously. And so she says that the feminist project for women who were not silenced in the gendering process is to actually redirect their speech, to perhaps rethink their speech, the intention of their speech, the motive of their speech, and of course the audience, and how to have a different audience accept speech of women of color as legitimate. She continues and says, our speech, the right speech of womanhood, was often soliloquy, the talking into thin air, the talking to ears that do not hear you, the talk that is simply not listened to. Unlike the Black male preacher whose speech was to be heard, who was to be listened to, whose words were to be remembered, The voices of Black women giving orders, making threats, fussing, could be tuned out, could become a kind of background music, audible, but not acknowledged as significant speech. And so what Bell Hooks does here is she allows us to see how in the culture she grew up in African-American culture, what she experienced was that her voice, because of her sex, was being gendered to be less important than male voices, than voices that came from male bodies. And she could see this in particular with the way that boys, if they spoke up, were perhaps good enough, if trained, to be Black male preachers, and that they should be held up, given the pulpit, listened to, but that Black women's voices could be dismissed. I would suggest here that, in fact, she's perhaps reflecting on how the personal is political and how women's voices, including Black women's voices, were more often relegated to important in the personal sphere, in the home. Men's voices were given power within the public sphere. This is an obvious foundation of patriarchy, right? The split between personal and public, personal and professional, and that women's voices are to be heard at home, if at all, and men's voices are to be heard in public. So this is our example of how Bell Hooks differentiates the gendering process and comes to show us how the personal is political. And we can use this to reflect on our own lives and how our own gendering processes growing up have determined whether we're heard, whether we can speak, whether we must be silent, and in what context we should be silent. Who pays attention to our voice if we do speak up? Who values our voice? Is it only valued in the personal realm, or are we someone who does have the right to speech and political action in the professional and public and political realms? So a lot of women believe that the feminist struggle is over because they experience perhaps full rights of womanhood, full speech rights of womanhood. But I would beg to differ and to say that basically, until all are free, none are free. And there are many women who have been gendered, to not speak up, to be, in fact, codependent, to put other people's feelings above their own, to such an extent that they lose track of what their own feelings are. They can even lose the experience of what those feelings are, what their thoughts are, what their ideas are, what the political agendas are, right? Okay, so I encourage you to ask these questions of your own life. How did having a particular body, particular genitalia, differentiate the way you were treated culturally, familially, personally, interpersonally, right? What privileges were you given or denied because of the genitalia you have? All of that is biological sex determined, the experience determined by culture. That's what we want to differentiate. And then, of course, we want to see how that gendering process, that cultural construction of each body, sexed body, in fact, disappears some women's experiences and makes us search the personal and rally around each other and create a constituency of personal experiences in order to be taken seriously and to make political change. Thank you. See you next time.